Protests at a controversial drilling site in West Sussex have been going on for nearly a month now. Demonstrators fear the plant at Balcombe will eventually be used for fracking, and hundreds have descended on the area.
Well, yesterday Sussex police arrested 29 people, and among those detained, Caroline Lucas, the Green Party MP for Brighton and Hove. Well, she was released on bail last night and joins us from our Brighton studio this morning. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So you're released on bail. When do you find out if you may be charged?
I think the decision is made next week.
For breaching the provision which allows police the power to impose conditions on assemblies to prevent serious public disorder, serious criminal damage or serious disruption to the life of the community. Do you believe that the protests are disrupting the community there at Balcombe?
Well, certainly the protest that I was involved in yesterday wasn't interrupting activity at all. We were not on the road. We were on a little driveway leading up to the gate to the Quadrilla site. Of course, Quadrilla had already said that it wasn't going to be working over the period of the climate camp being in Balcombe. And I think one of the most refreshing things has been to see just how welcoming people in the village have been. We know that there's been polls done that suggest around 85% of the people in the village don't want fracking there and are happy that the other protesters have come to join them in support. And so I think together we were able to make a very strong message to the government to say that we don't need and we don't want fracking.
OK, well, you report one version of the poll result. There are other versions. I mean, 85%, but only of those who responded to the actual poll. We saw pictures there of you being arrested. Now, you have a voice as an MP and you have access to influential people. You are part of the democratic process. You're part of the House of Commons. That surely, in your role, is the place where you should express your opinion and represent the opinions of those people who have elected you. Why get involved then in action like this?
Well, you're right that I do have an enormously privileged position in Parliament, and I have used it ever since I was elected to raise the issue of climate change, to raise the issue of clean energy right from the moment that I was elected. And it's been an issue, climate change has been an issue that I've been campaigning on for many, many years before I was elected as well. Of course, many of the protesters there too had been contacting their MPs over many, many weeks and months. And to be honest, you get a sense that the government simply isn't listening. I organised a debate on fracking in Parliament just before recess. And again, there was no real listening from the government. They just stuck to their set line. And I think that means that there are occasions, and they are limited occasions, and they're not ones to be used lightly, but there are occasions when democratic channels have been tried and failed, when it can be legitimate to take non-violent direct action.
OK, well, I mean, you know, non-violent direct action, which has resulted in 29 arrests and possible charges. What the message that you're sending out is the democratic process that you are a part of does not work, and that people should take matters into their own hands, aren't you?
Well, I think in many ways, very sadly, the democratic process that we have doesn't work very well. And anybody who has tried to raise issues in Parliament or looked at the ways in which people are elected would probably come to the same conclusion. But the point is this, that no one is suggesting that direct action is something that people do lightly. None of the people yesterday were doing that lightly. But I think that when there are bigger laws that are being broken in terms of our climate change commitments, in terms of understanding that if we are serious about staying below 2 degrees warming, as we have legal obligations to do, then that is simply incompatible with a what gas out of the ground.
What Quadrilla are doing is legal, and they have a licence to do it. So they are not doing anything that you're suggesting. I mean, they are doing something. They are drilling, an exploratory drilling for oil. They're not even carrying out the process of fracking against which you are protesting. So this looks a little preemptive, and it doesn't. What is the effect, apart from to get yourself arrested? And as Tom Harris, a Labour MP, has said, is this not an exercise in some sort of self-promotion?
Well, it's not about self-promotion. I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk about fracking. And I'm very glad that as a result of the protests over the whole of the last 3 or 4 days, fracking has been absolutely at the top of the political agenda. That's what the protesters gathering in Bolcombe want to do. They want to propel this issue into the limelight so we can absolutely challenge, for example, the government when it says that fracking is going to lower energy prices. There is no evidence that here in the UK or the EU, fracking is likely to do that because the situation here is so very different from the US in terms both of geology, in terms of the gas markets that we have, in terms of the density of population and so forth. And I think when you have a government that is frankly just coming out with all sorts of stuff that simply isn't true,
OK, but Cuadrilla are not carrying out fracking at the Bolcombe site.
They're not carrying out fracking at the Bolcombe site yet. Their exploratory drilling is to see whether or not fracking is going to be appropriate. Now, we all know that Bolcombe is on the front line of that whole debate about whether or not fracking goes ahead in this country. And if they do decide to frack in Bolcombe, then that will be a green light for the rest of the country. And that is why people from all around the country have come together in Bolcombe over the weekend to be able to send that very strong signal to the government that fracking isn't compatible with our climate change objectives. And it carries out a whole range of risks for the local environment as well.
Caroline Lucas, thank you.